Good evening, everyone. My name is Amir Dotan. I'm going to be talking about Stoke Newington's historical street signs, a topic that I think is fascinating. Those of you that follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook would have seen quite a few updates over the years where I photograph old signs and talk about their origin and some of the history behind them. So in this talk, I've summarized quite a few of those observations, a little anecdotes, which I hope you'll find interesting. So let's kick off. When you think about street signs, they're everywhere. Every street corner, every sort of main road has them. And you don't really think about them that much. It's quite a very functional object that tells you the name of the street. And as you can see from this collage that I've created, when you actually start looking at them in a bit more detail, they really vary in terms of the style, in terms of the color, in terms of the typeface used. And there's also other kind of details that are very easy to miss as you go about your daily lives, and you may not necessarily stop and really take a very close look at those signs. So there's a really wide array of street signs out there. And to be honest, a lot of them aren't that interesting. I'll be very honest about that. But when you take a closer look, and if you actually apply more of a historical lens, you start to realize that some of those street signs, they do sort of stand out, even if in some cases, as we're going to see, they're almost completely invisible and camouflaged when you look at them today. And there's a reason why I would say that some of those signs are historical, are special. They're kind of a link to the past in many ways that I'm going to be talking about. And really what I hope in this talk is to introduce you to some of those signs and make you appreciate them, hopefully make you admire them in case they're outside your house in some cases. There are different types of historical street signs in Stoke Newington, quite a nice variety. There are tablets, you can still see a few of those. We've got the hand-painted street signs that I just talked about. We've got one of my favorites, which is kind of the cast metal nameplates, going to be quite a big focus of this talk. You've got the enamel nameplates as well, very kind of part of the older signs you'll find. And then there's a very kind of peculiar type that I think is maybe almost unique to Stoke Newington based on my research. These painted plates on a very sort of thin plate, metal plate that didn't really kind of survive that well. And then you've got kind of nameplates that I'm going to be talking about as well. These were introduced in the late 50s, early 60s. And when you try and put those on a timeline, you can really see the evolution and the story of Stoke Newington as a whole in many ways, all the way from the 19th century, 20th century, and the 21st century. And we can see how those signs evolved. I'm going to talk about how in some cases the street names changed, the local authority name that you see on those signs have changed as well. When you look at the anatomy, as I say, and kind of the social history of street signs, typically they would have three main components that I'm going to be focusing on, and those are the ones that really tell the story. You got the street name, clearly, but you can also get, in some cases, the postal district. Nowadays, it would always be N16, N4, and so on, but we're going to see that in the past, it would have been N, for example, and we only have very few signs. We can still see that old postal district. And then you have the name of the local authority. Today, this would be the London Borough of Hackney, but we're going to see that it used to be the Borough of Stoke Newington and South Hornsey in some cases. So even though a street sign would only have typically those three components, but they do change over the years. And those old street signs give us that window to the past, if you like. If you are interested in street signs and after this talk you get the bug, I highly recommend this terrific book by Alistair Hall, London Street Signs. It's a terrific resource that takes you through the different types of signs, the social history behind them, the technique, the typography used. It's a real kind of Bible, if you like, of London street signs. And it's a joy to look and flick through all the photos. Definitely go and get it. So let's kick off. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the N postal district. As I mentioned, postal districts are visible in most signs. And we know kind of N16, N4, and so on today, but there was a period we didn't have those. This is the original London postal districts. You can see you had kind of the Northern District, you had kind of the Northeastern and so on. And Stoke Newington, as you can see in the map, was very much within the N postal district. It was actually its own postal district. You had the Stoke Newington Postal District N. And the street signs of the time reflect that, that kind of N postal district. The reality is there are only a handful of signs within the boundaries of the former borough of Stoke Newington that still has those, that kind of N postal district. Most of them are so easy to miss. This is the first one I'm going to be sharing with you. This one is in Eid Road, N4. It's a road that I think, unless you live there or you've done my Stoke Newington boundary walk, you've probably never heard of, you've probably never visited. But it is interesting. It's just on the outskirts, the northern boundary of the old parish and the old borough. And I walked past it a few times, and then one time I was so pleased to kind of spot this street sign. It's completely discolored and it really blends, if you like, with its surroundings. It's almost like a chameleon. I had to kind of really take a close look and like, oh my God, this is an N street sign. I was really happy, did my sort of happy dance that day. And you can see it says Eid Road N. And these signs, the reason why they survived for as long as they have in some cases is because people just don't notice them. They're completely sort of become sort of part of the building in that sense. And there are only a few of these signs, so they're very rare, and discovering one is very exciting to me, at least. Next one up is in Stoke Newington High Street. This is quite a unique sign. It's quite discolored and it's very easy to miss. So here I highlight that sign, and if you take a closer look, this is what it looks like. And this is quite a fascinating one as well, because as we're going to see, some of these signs have two layers to them. So they were kind of repainted over the years. In this case, you can see the N, but then you can see the 6. So my kind of guess is that when N16 was introduced in 1917, they repainted the sign and turned it into N16. But I think over the years, as the color kind of got discolored, the N kind of came sort of center stage, and you can see it. This is my digital restoration of that sign. So again, very, very rare sign. You won't see another sign just like this one in terms of the style. That's the only surviving one. Another N street sign that I only discovered a few months ago is this one on the corner of Riversdale Road and Mount Grove Road. I saw the photo on the left in the Hackney archives, and I couldn't really make it out because there's another sign just like it, but on the opposite side, on the Islington side of the road. But you can also see there's a Stoke Newington Borough boundary marker. So it threw me off a bit, and I realized that it's probably still there, but it's completely covered by this massive tree in front of it. The other day, I was able to catch a glimpse of it and also the boundary marker, which made me very happy again. You can't really see it unless you take a very close look. On one hand, it's a shame, but on the other hand, that's probably protecting both the sign and the boundary marker. Next up, the South Hornsey Local Board. It was founded in 1865. It was abolished in 1900 when the Metropolitan Borough of Stoke Newington was created. Not a lot of people know about South Hornsey and kind of its role in Stoke Newington's history, but Hornsey Parish, which is pretty much today's Haringey, was massive. It was very, very big, but it also had, if you look at the bottom kind of right corner of the big map, it actually also had a few bits of Stoke Newington that we know today. Half of Clissold Park was in Hornsey Parish, and also streets that were within the Brownwood Park estate. So that's sort of Queen's Drive and sort of Finsbury Road, Wilberforce Road, Seven Sisters Road, all those bits kind of more kind of northwestern. And if you look at the map on the right, you can also see that Hornsey Parish had two detached sections kind of surrounded by Stoke Newington. There was, it looks like two, but it was actually one. And that's, if you look at kind of the area between Matthias Road and Allen Road. So this whole development that was called Albert Town. So Shakespeare Walk and Milton Grove and so on and so on. Those were within Hornsey Parish, and also streets between Dynevor Road and Palatine Road. All that was within Hornsey Parish. And at some point, they decided to make it into its own local authority in 1865. And that's where you've got South Hornsey. And you can see on the map I created, it had a very odd looking shape because it had kind of like these three sections, but it actually had its own town hall, which was in Milton Grove. It was then called Milton Road. This town hall became Stoke Newington's first town hall when it became a metropolitan borough. And all these areas were merged with the old parish to create the borough of Stoke Newington. And you can still see kind of remnants of South Hornsey in kind of boundary markers in Clissold Park, in the sort of drainage sort of covers on kind of on pavements as well, where it says South Hornsey Local Board. And street signs are another indication of that. In terms of street signs, South Hornsey did feature in the painted street signs in those areas that were administered by the South Hornsey Local Board. The first one I'm going to show you is Wilberforce Road, N4, just on the corner of Mount Grove Road. This is the sign. You can see, again, there's kind of two layers to it. There's quite a lot going on. So just to help you make sense of it, right, you can see the South Hornsey and the N postcode was right there on the bottom. Another example is in Victorian Grove, right? A sign that's quite faded, easy to miss, but that sort of SO bottom left is very kind of easy to spot if you take a closer look. And again, you can see there are two layers there, and this is the reconstruction. So the first one was probably Victoria Grove, South Hornsey N, and then in 1900, when South Hornsey was incorporated into the new borough of Stoke Newington, someone probably came, painted over, got rid of the South Hornsey, and put Victoria Grove. Next thing I want to focus on is street renaming. Some of those old street signs provide, if you like, a trace of some of the previous names that streets have. Streets were renamed for a number of reasons over the years. The main one in 1937 was there was a wholesale renaming of streets because a lot of the old parishes had the same street names like Church Street, High Street, Park Lane, Park Street, Park Road, Church Road. And as those parishes, if you like, sort of became part of just London and became London boroughs, you had probably so many high streets and so many Church Street that there was a wholesale renaming to kind of make them more distinct and remove any of those duplications where possible. But some of those old street signs still give us a glimpse into what the original name was. So the first one is actually in Baubled Road. And this is a sign that, again, is completely camouflaged. It's very easy to miss. I only spotted it about a year ago. I don't know if you can even see it in this photo, but it's just this sort of black plate. And if you take a closer look, this is what you see. And this is a really, I would say, very interesting and kind of almost like a double excitement, because not only do you have the old name, but you also have the N postcode. So you have the Ede Road, you had the Stoke Newington High Street, and the Broughton Road one, and the Riversdale Road. Only 4 signs where you can still see that sort of N postcode. And I think I used to think that it got discolored, but a few days ago, Alistair Hall, who wrote that terrific book, suggested to me that maybe it was actually just painted black. So it was actually easier when the street was renamed to Baubled Road, rather than take the sign down, maybe just to paint it black so people don't get confused. This is my digital reconstruction. If you like what it used to look like, maybe the N was red, I don't know, but it's kind of hidden behind that sort of drain pipe. Hopefully it's going to be left alone and last for many, many years to come. This is Shakespeare Walk. I get a lot of questions about the spelling and how come it was renamed. In old maps, you can see both spellings with an E, without the E. But if you look at the old sign that used to be there, similar story, 2 layers. You can see the South Hornsey right there at the bottom again. And this is what it used to look like. So it had Shakespeare Road originally with South Hornsey at the bottom, and then only Shakespeare Road, most likely when South Hornsey was abolished. Moving on, in 1900, there was a complete sort of rejig of local authorities in London. These metropolitan boroughs were created from the old kind of civil parishes. In the case of Stoke Newington, as I mentioned, it was the civil parish of Stoke Newington plus the South Hornsey Local Board created the metropolitan borough of Stoke Newington. It was abolished in 1965 when there was another kind of rejig to have fewer but bigger boroughs. So the borough of Shoreditch, Hackney, and Stoke Newington were lumped together to create the new London borough of Hackney. Now, interestingly, as you're going to see in a minute, the street signs along the borders of the new borough had an additional borough of Stoke Newington, which you didn't get in any of those street signs within kind of the inner streets in a way. This is a map that shows you the surviving borough of Stoke Newington street signs. I estimate, if you consider that there used to be at least one in every street corner, plus the main roads like Green Lane, Stoke Newington High Street, Stoke Newington Road, Seven Sisters Road, and so on, probably would have been around 65. Now there are only 17. This is a great photo that kind of shows in Hammersmith Park the boundary between the old boroughs of Hackney and Stoke Newington. On the left, you've got a sign that has Borough of Stoke Newington, and on the right, you've got same street, but this one is a very different style. This is the enamel one compared to the cast iron one, and that one says Borough of Hackney. So you kind of can do that dance of I'm in Hackney, I'm in Stoke Newington, but you can clearly see how street signs in that sense also acted as boundary markers to let you know in which local authority you're in or you're entering or exiting. The first one I'm going to show you is the oldest that I'm aware of. This one is on the corner of Stoke Newington High Street and Stoke Newington Church Street. A beautiful enamel sign with sort of blue writing. It actually has the old name as well, High Street. In 1937, it was renamed Stoke Newington High Street to distinguish it from any other high streets like sort of Kingsland High Street and so on and so on. You can spot it in this photo from 1903. Actually, which is really fascinating to see. It's just there on the corner. So as far as I'm aware, it's the oldest surviving Borough of Stoke Newington street sign that's still there. Other signs that you can find, like in Belgrade Road, are completely camouflaged. They've been painted. They're very, very easy to miss. Here's a close-up. This one is on Belgrade Road and Stoke Newington Road. Belgrade Road was actually the new name. The street was renamed in 1917 in kind of the height of the First World War. It was originally called Wiesbaden Road, but from what I read, it was at residents' request due to anti-German sentiment. So when you think about reasons why streets get renamed, this is a very specific one. That series that you see here was introduced, I believe, in the late 30s. The first photo that I've seen with that style dates back from 1942. It's very distinct with the comma and kind of the shape. It's very kind of tangible cast iron nameplate. From the same series, the signs that were used in the inner streets don't have the Borough of Stoke Newington. This is probably the most famous one, Stoke Newington Church Street. You can also see how it's two pieces actually, because it was so long. For a long time, it was said to be the longest street name in London when it went from Church Street to Stoke Newington Church Street. A lot of Stoke Newington's old street signs didn't age very well. They deteriorated, they got discolored, and got into quite a poor state. It's nice to see that some of them have been restored, I believe, by sort of house owners. I'm not aware of any council-led effort to restore those signs, unfortunately. Hopefully that will change. This one is in Blackstock Road. Nice sort of close-up. Again, very much a symbol of civic pride, very big. You can't really miss it. But the reality is that that sign, up until recently, used to look like this. Very poor state. Could have been easily removed or deemed not fit for purpose. Luckily, someone decided to restore it. Now, these were, like I said, late 30s, early 40s. In the late 50s, there was a new kind of type, a new batch of signs that are very distinguished as well. You can see that this one is using a kind of like an old English typeface for the Borough of Stoke Newington. I love this one in Green Lanes because it's right next to a boundary marker from 1901. So you can see that you've got two indicators of the kind of the local authority. When you look at old photos like this one in Baird's Grove, you can see that those old late 30s cast iron nameplates were everywhere. These ones are still in situ, luckily. Some of them are easy to miss, like this one in Green Lanes, Seven Sisters Road. It's almost completely black now. Here's another one, not in sort of good condition, just needs a bit of love. So that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed this whistle-stop tour of Stoke Newington's historical street signs. As I said, it's more than just the name of the street. It's the previous name of the street. It's the previous postal district that Stoke Newington was within. It's the local authority like South Hornsey and the borough of Stoke Newington that are long gone. So I hope that you have a newfound appreciation of old street signs. I hope that you recognize and appreciate their historical significance like I do. If you have one that you would like to maybe restore, hopefully you can arrange that. I'd love to see one of those old signs being brought back to life. Thank you very much.